shorter practice, aiming at bring some relief to some of the muscles involved in breathing so that the breath moves a little bit easier. And this is also a really great practice if you have lower back pain. So we're going to start out in a supported fish pose. So you can have two blocks. One will go right underneath your shoulder blades to prop up the heart, and the other one to hold the head. So you can kind of decide what height works best for the block, but the bottom tips of your shoulder blades should be able to hang right off the top edge of the block. And then supporting your head with whatever height feels like enough for your neck. Arms out by your sides. You can have the knees bent, feet on the floor, and kind of play around with the width of your feet so that your knees can rest in and your hips don't have to work so hard. Set your gaze at one spot that's not moving, or close your eyes. And make a conscious effort to release the weight of your head onto the block. Maybe start to move into some deeper breathing. The chest and the belly will naturally expand. So see if you can also direct some of your breath right onto that lower block and into your side ribs as well. And it can be helpful to just place your hands right on those side ribs and feel for moving your breath right into your hands so your rib cage spreads out wide. Release the weight of your head onto that block again. And see if you can let your hips be really heavy on the ground. You can stay here with your knees bent, or if things have started to feel a bit more comfortable, you could extend the legs out straight. Bring the hands together, interlace the fingers, turn the palms up towards the ceiling and reach up, feeling your shoulder blades spread wide. You could push up into the ceiling. And then any amount, take your arms alongside the ears. Continuing to push through the hands. Hips just as heavy as they were before your arms were overhead. Breath still moving in all directions. And then bring the arms back down. Rebend the knees. And come off the blocks. Just taking a moment seated. Observing how the body feels after that first shape. And then we're going to set up for a side bend. So you can use a bolster, rolled blankets, a couple pillows. I have a longer torso, so I like to put a block under the bolster. But that might not work for you, so just feeling out what might be best in terms of height. And then we'll set up so that the hips are just up off the ground as we come over the bolster. You can support your head with a blanket here. I like to just rest my head on my lower arm, but you can always use a blanket or blocks under the side of the head. And then just hold on to that top wrist with your bottom hand and give it a gentle tug, just to take up any of the slack along the joints. And then keeping that hold on your wrist, can you start to let your hips sink back towards the floor? Now you have that bolster underneath your bottom ribs. So you can feel for moving your bottom ribs into the bolster as you breathe in. And your top ribs expand towards the ceiling. Can you release the full weight of the head, either into your block or maybe just even letting your head hang? And the hips sink heavy towards the floor. Soften the expression on your face, as if you could let your face almost just kind of slide off towards the floor. And after a few minutes here, if you want to add in a little bit of movement, you can turn your chest a little towards the floor. Maybe open up a little bit towards the ceiling. your bolster, give a real soft massage. Tissue around those bottom ribs. And then we'll come up onto your bottom forearm. Extend your top legs if you can find the sole of the foot on the ground. And we'll lift up, pressing down through the bottom knee, finding an active side bend here. Take the arm up alongside the ear. Letting that bottom hip press up to pick up the top hip. And you're still breathing. And then release down. Press up to a seat. Just checking in how things feel. And then we'll do the other side. So again, maybe a block underneath. If you have a shorter torso, that might not be as comfortable for you. And then the ribs will come right up on top of the bolster, just so far up that your hips are slightly off the ground. Find our side bend, hold onto that wrist, take up any of the slack here, and then start to let the hips sink back towards the floor. Move your breath into your side ribs. Into your belly and your back. And then if it feels good to rock a little bit, chest towards the floor and then towards the ceiling. down to your bottom forearm. Extend that top leg long, rooting down into the sole of the foot. See if you can really get the pinky side of that foot grounded. And then we'll press down through your bottom forearm and your bottom knee to lift up, coming into an active side bend. Sliding that bottom hip up. Rooting down through all of your knuckles, all your fingertips. And then we'll come down and find a seat. Move the bolster and the block off to the side. And lay on our backs. You might like a blanket or a block underneath your head. Knees bent. Roll right over onto your left side and draw the knees up a little closer to the chest. You're going to take that right wrist with the left hand once again and taking up all the slack, slide that arm along the floor away from you. Feeling that right shoulder blade slide along for the ride. So the shoulder blade is following that elbow out. You might need to hold a little higher up on the arm. And just take a moment to rest here. Maybe you notice the connections from your arm into your side ribs, into your lower back, into your chest. And the pull of the arm is turning the chest towards the floor. Without losing any of that turning of the chest, maybe you bring your right foot back onto the floor, coming into constructive rest, just with that right leg, so the knee up towards the ceiling, foot grounded. And just that lifting of the knee might make the connections between your arm all the way down into your lower back a bit more obvious. What does it feel like if you imagine moving your breath down that path from the arm into the lower back? And as this becomes more comfortable, you might roll towards the pinky side of that right foot, kind of opening up the knee more. You could imagine that outer right hip starting to sag a little heavier towards the ground. Observe any resistance in your chest, in your upper back. Can you breathe in a way that tells your nervous system that you're safe? Can you find some long, slow exhales? good barometer of how deep you've taken your practice. So if you can still breathe in a way that feels steady and calm, you're probably in a pretty good place. If you notice that you're kind of holding your breath or you're bracing against the intensity of the sensations of the pose, then that might be a sign that you need to back out. Sometimes we come up and find that initial resistance, that initial bracing, and you can use your breath to move through it. So that's a nice place to play. But if you're in a place where there's not even the possibility because it's too intense, then you just back out. Let's come back onto our backs. Notice what it feels like to breathe here. And then we'll do the other side. So just rolling over, knees up towards the chest. Take a hold of the left wrist with the right hand and gently pull, turning your chest towards the floor, picking up the slack through the elbow, the shoulder joint. And then we breathe. Maybe open up your left knee. Bring that left leg into constructive rest. Maybe you roll a bit towards the pinky side of that left foot. Almost like your left leg is rolling into Baddha Konasana. And then return to constructive rest on your back. Find some cat-cow movements with our hips. So moving between a forward pelvic tilt where the pubic bone slides away from the navel and the lower back arches off the ground, to a backwards pelvic tilt where your pubic bone is moving towards the navel. You can imagine your tailbone curling forward and up, and just moving between those two. And you might notice that your breath naturally starts to follow the movement. Inhale, opening up front side of the body, and the exhale closes the front side of the body a bit. And as you move back and forth between the forward and the backward pelvic tilt, notice which muscles are helping to make this movement happen. Where is the work? And could you imagine the action being driven by your top inner thighs? Your groins pull you forward on the inhale and draw you back on the exhale. Feeling the length on the inhales ripple right up along the sides of the spine. What if just the right side could make this action happen? What if it was just the right groin pulling you forward and rocking you back? And this can be like 99% in your imagination. Now what if it was just the left side? And then come to rest. Bring the knees in towards the chest, give them a little squeeze. Maybe rock along the length of your spine a couple of times. And then see if you can catch yourself up on your hips. You can have your hands down for support. You can hold the back of your thighs. Lift up through your chest. Maybe bring the shins parallel to the floor. Squeeze the inner thighs together. You can imagine your tailbone kind of curling forward and up towards your heels. Maybe you release the arms. Maybe you extend the legs. We'll cross the legs and come up into tabletop. Just finding some gentle cat-cows here. Just like we did on our backs. You can imagine your groins pulling your hips back towards your cow pose and then curling back in for your cat. Letting the rest of the movement ripple right up through the spine and into the head. Next time you come into your cat pose, bring the hips back towards your heels for child's pose. You could stay more passive, letting gravity take over, where you can crawl your fingertips forward as long as they can go, anchoring the tailbone down and back. And then hands under the shoulders, press up to a seat. You can stay kneeling or you can come into a cross-legged seat, and we'll just do a little bit of breath work before Shavasana. So bringing your first two fingers right up to the center of your forehead with your right hand. Go ahead and close your left nostril with your ring finger, and we'll breathe on the right side. Feeling the breath move up into the chest and the belly, out into the side ribs, and filling into the back. And the next time you come to the top of your inhale, pause. Block your right nostril with your thumb and exhale left side. Inhale left side. Pause. Block your left nostril, exhale right. Inhale right. Pause. Exhale left. Inhale left. Pause. Exhale right. Inhale right. Pause. Exhale left. Inhale left. Pause. Exhale right. One more round. Inhale right. Pause. Exhale left. Inhale left. Pause. Exhale right. You can release the hand. Notice what it feels like to breathe through both sides. And we'll set up for Shavasana. So you could lay flat out in corpse pose, support your head any way that feels best for your neck. So working through a little bit of a lower back injury. So I'm going to set up my bolster really high up underneath my thighs. Can feel really nice for the lower back, even if you don't have an injury that you're working through. And maybe some support under the neck. Eyes closed or gaze set at one spot. Notice the imprint of your body on the floor. And with each exhale, can you sink deeper into all the spots where you're touching down? So you get heavier through your heels, your hips, your head. And rather than trying to move these big, long breaths through the body, just let your body naturally breathe. If your mind starts to wander, come back to the weight of your body on the ground and observe the gentle moving of your breath. Resistance will creep up in the form of stories in your head or tension in your body. And you just gently remind yourself that there is nothing to do but release. There is nothing to do but be held by the ground. And the nice thing about home practice is you could stay here as long as you'd like, but if you're ready to leave Shavasana, roll to either side and press up to a seat. You can bring your palms together at your chest or stack the hands over the heart. And I like to close out my practice by chanting one Om. Thank you so much.